Ozzie, Jeremy Perry, and Mackenzie Renner appear on behalf of Mr. Mark Jensen, who appears in person. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, we are here on January 19th, 2023. We're going to continue with the cross-examination of Lieutenant Rasberg, who's still under oath. Who's doing the cross?
Your Honor, they haven't started the cross yet. The state did have some housekeeping matters we wanted to address pertaining to the admission of exhibits into evidence. If we could go through that real quickly before. So the state would move exhibits S1 through S5 into evidence, subject to cross-examination. The state would also move exhibit S17, S18, S19, S20, 21, 22, 23. Well, those have been received. I'm sorry, S19 had not been received. Then also S26 and S27, S30 and S31, S33, 34, 35, and 36. And I would point out, Your Honor, that with respect to S33, it's described in the exhibit list as the checkbook with initials JCJ. It's actually Julie Jensen's day planner, not her checkbook. It's about the size of a checkbook, so I can see how the clerk might have thought it was a checkbook, but it's not a checkbook, it's a day planner. Then we'd also move, let's see, S42 and S45 into evidence. Subject to cross-examination.
Did you get the numbers? All right, the clerk got the numbers. They're received. We are done with your direct, correct?
I am, Your Honor.
All right. Okay, who's doing the cross? Go ahead, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Rasberg, when did you say you were retired?
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, Mr. Perry. I retired in 2012.
And what was the last report that you ever did in this case?
I don't recall.
Certainly nothing since December 2012.
Correct.
Okay. You testified in this case in 2008.
Correct.
Would you have done anything after 2008 on this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What was the last interview of a witness in this case that you conducted?
Possibly in February of 2012 when I obtained a manuscript and book.
Okay. Nothing for the last 10 years?
Not that I recall.
And prior to coming here yesterday, did you review your reports in this case?
Yes.
And did you review your prior testimony?
Yes.
You were the lead investigator in this case.
Yes.
Were you really the only investigator in this case?
Primarily.
You decided which witnesses to interview?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. You decided when to interview them?
Yes.
What evidence to collect?
Yes.
And you made the decision about what evidence to forward to the crime lab?
Yes.
And when to forward it?
Sometimes.
Were there instances where you didn't decide what and when to forward it to the crime lab?
Occasionally on some of the evidence, I had to make an appointment at the crime lab. So I may have wanted to take it up there earlier than I wanted to, but I had to make an appointment to get in there and explain the case.
I see. So it wasn't entirely your decision. You had to wait for other people.
Correct.
And if you made the wrong decision on what evidence to collect, there's a risk that it would be just gone forever.
Correct.
Like the search of the house, right?
Yes.
You were there on December 3rd
Yes.
and on December 4th searching.
Yes,
And really anything that you didn't collect at that point, that was maybe it, right?
correct.
And you, of course, recognize that if witnesses aren't spoken to promptly, memories can be affected
Yes,
by the passage of time,
yes,
by speaking with other people,
yes,
by reading media reports.
yes,
And this was a case where there were a lot of media reports.
at the time of trial there was.
And what others say to people can cause bias,
Correct.
and bias can affect memories.
Yes,
You were also responsible for making sure that evidence wasn't contaminated in the case.
yes,
Okay, and you did that by the process that you were collecting it,
yes,
storing it,
yes,
and then submitting it, right?
correct.
And you made all those decisions on December 3rd, 1998.
In reference to what we recovered on December 3rd, that is correct.
About how to search and what to take from the Jensen family home.
Yes,
Now, when you got there, you weren't the first officer on scene, correct?
correct.
Who was?
I believe, I'm unsure, but however, I know that Sergeant Riley was there on scene, and he was the supervisor that was on scene before I arrived.
Okay, do you know how long Sergeant Riley was on scene before you got there?
Probably, and again, I'm estimating about an hour.
And when you got there, were David and Douglas still there, the kids?
No,
The cause of death was not obvious, correct?
correct.
And you testified yesterday that you received information that Julie Jensen was depressed,
On December 3rd?
right?
Yes,
And that she had recently started taking an antidepressant,
yes,
had recently started taking Ambien.
Objection, Your Honor. This is all hearsay. He's not indicating the source of the information.
Well, I think he talked about this information on his direct.
It was just yesterday afternoon.
Let's continue. Go ahead.
Is that right?
yes,
And you learned some of this from the EMTs that were on the scene before you.
I did not talk to any EMTs at the scene.
Oh, did you get this information from Sergeant Riley?
No,
Well, who did you get this information from?
Mr. Jensen.
Okay.
That's the basis for my objection, Your Honor. It's hearsay.
Well, this one is sustained then.
I request that the witness's previous statements or concerning this information be stricken and the jury be instructed to disregard it.
Well, I don't know if he got all the information. Did he just say he got all the information from
Yes.
Mrs. Jensen? All right, then it is stricken.
And would you instruct the jury, please, to disregard that information that came from this witness on cross?
And you are to disregard that testimony, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Thank you.
You explained to Mark Jensen that you wanted to get his consent to search the home. You testified to that yesterday, correct?
Correct.
You wanted to look through personal items
Yes,
and to take items that you wanted to investigate further.
correct.
And you received full cooperation and that consent that you asked for.
Yes,
You looked for all medications.
yes,
You looked for any toxins.
yes,
You looked for any evidence of struggle.
yes,
You even checked the windows.
correct.
You looked for fluids.
Yes,
Did you look for fluids on the bed,
yes,
carpet,
yes,
and you checked bathrooms?
yes,
And you agree it was important to not make any assumptions about evidence at the scene, correct?
correct.
Because you didn't know exactly what you were looking for.
Yes,
You had to find anything that might be later relevant.
Correct.
On direct, you testified that you took samples from all of the drains.
Not all of the drains.
Okay, which drains did you not take samples from?
I have them labeled in my report, and on the bottles, I believe it's the bathroom and then the middle bathroom.
What other drains were there in the house?
There was one of them, I'd have to review the video again I depicted in there, but there was one that was completely glued. And in fact, I pondered whether or not to saw Mr. Jensen's drains from underneath his sink. And I thought possibly that would be excessive because then he wouldn't be able to operate the drain that I would destroy in getting it. So there was one drain that I decided not to take the fluid from because it would have done damage.
Okay, so I think that you testified that at least from the middle bathroom and master bathroom, you took the samples were taken of the drain.
Correct.
Okay, so that would mean not the kitchen.
I think you are correct, yes.
Okay. How many bathrooms did the house have?
2.
We saw the video yesterday of the walk through the house.
Correct.
And you noted at the beginning of the video, that was your voice on the video, right?
It was.
Okay. That Julie Jensen's body had been moved by the firefighters before you got there.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And I noticed as you walked through the house and handled certain things, you were doing that with your bare hands.
Sometimes. And again, to operate the camera, I couldn't do it with the gloves. And if you notice from the photos, and they're in evidence, we used a substantial amount of gloves in there. In fact, I still have them in evidence. And so there were times that the gloves just didn't, in wearing them, I couldn't perform the duty that I wanted to. But most of the time I did wear rubber gloves, and that's a matter of my usual technique.
So it was just like for convenience sakes at different times that you would just not have gloves on?
I wouldn't say it was convenience sake. It was a matter for me to operate my evidence collection. I couldn't, for example, the video camera with those gloves on there, the buttons were rather small. And you noticed in the video, I comment about that,
Tiny
on
buttons.
the trouble I'm having with it. So wearing gloves and operating the video camera just wouldn't work.
I'm going to show you some photos from the scene. These are marked as exhibits. Let's see, they're not in order. 40, 35, 41, 46, 47, 37, 38, 36, 39. They're in this crazy order, but that's the order I'm going to ask you about them.
Have you looked at these, Mr. Jambos?
I'm going to look at them right now, Your Honor. Thank you. Yes, I have. The state has no objection, Your Honor. I've seen all those photos.
Thank you.
If you could just page through them and let me know if you recognize them as being from the scene.
Yes, these are from photos that I taken at the Jensen home on December 3rd, 1998.
You took these, or did was there another officer taking pictures?
It was a joint effort. I believe Sergeant Hunter took these photos, and of course I was there with him as he took it.
You've seen those before.
I have, yes.
I want to start by asking you about Exhibit 40, and we can put that on the screen. What's that a picture of?
That's a picture of the nightstand that was next to Julie's bed. Julie would have been off to the left there. And it's the reason I took those photos or had them taken was there's a glass with a watery substance in it. And there's a pink bowl with crackers. And then there's a ceramic blue bowl with a spoon with macaroni and cheese in it.
Okay. And the blue cup that's got liquid in it.
Correct.
And did you take that liquid?
Yes.
Did you take the cup?
I don't recall.
Was that submitted to the crime lab?
The substance that was in the blue cup was submitted to the crime lab, yes.
But the cup itself was not.
I don't believe so.
And you took the two bowls,
Yes.
and it's the blue bowl that has mac and cheese in it,
Correct.
and it's mac and cheese. You just visually identified it as that.
Yes.
And the other ones had what'd you say? Crackers.
Crackers, yes.
Now those weren't submitted to the crime lab, were they?
Yes, they were.
The bowls were.
Yes.
Was the mac and cheese and the crackers submitted?
You are correct. The mac and cheese was submitted and the crackers. I did confer with the crime lab when I went up there and submitted that. And I spoke with the analysts there because I had some questions about some other items. One in particular was the glass that's on the counter. You don't have that photographed here, but I was concerned whether they needed that for testing of any substance. And primarily what I was looking for was antifreeze. And the analyst advised me that he could not test to see if there was some substance on there of poison, in particular antifreeze or ethylene glycol on there. So they elected only to take the food itself. In this case, it would be the macaroni and cheese and the crackers, and of course the substance that was in the blue cup.
You remember testifying earlier in this case that that those items weren't tested because they were all eaten by mice?
Yes, that is accurate. What happened before they were eaten by mice was it was submitted to the crime lab, and the crime lab determined that there was no poisoning or ethylene glycol or antifreeze in it. And then while it was stored at the Pleasant Prairie Police Department, we had a mouse problem, and the mice came in and ate all of the macaroni and cheese and crackers in the bowls. But however, it was tested before the mice ate them.
If you could turn to Exhibit 35. And what's that a picture of?
That is a picture of the master bathroom.
Now you see some Dixie cups next to the sink, correct?
Correct.
Those weren't seized, were they?
They were not.
And they weren't sent for testing.
No, they weren't.
If you could put up Exhibit 41, please look at 41. That's the Jensen family den,
Correct.
and that's the computer room, right?
Yes.
Okay. And is this the view from the hallway looking in?
Yes.
And that was the positioning of the computer and the computer monitor as it was on December 3rd, right?
Yes.
Had you ever been to the house before December 3rd inside to see
No.
the computer den?
I'm sorry. No.
You'd not.
Please, I go repeat your question, please. I spoke over you.
Prior to December 3rd, had you seen that computer room?
No.
And the positioning of the door, that door is just partially closed in this picture, right?
Yes.
And if it was closed even just a little bit more, you wouldn't be able to see the computer screen.
That would be correct.
Now, from that room, you took the Jensen family computer, right?
Correct.
You didn't take the monitor, you just took the CPU.
Correct.
And you recovered a cigar box with zip disks.
Yes.
That was in this room.
Yes.
And on the desk, you found a web printout on paroxetine, correct?
I recall recovering that, but I'm not absolutely sure that it was on the desk, but I do recall recovering that.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 50.
Yes, sir.
You recognize this?
I do.
And it was recovered from the Jensen home on December 3rd.
Correct.
Okay, you don't remember if it was in the den?
I don't recall. It was at the Jensen household, though.
Okay. Did you look through this on December 3rd?
Not likely.
Have you looked through it ever?
Yes.
It identifies what paroxetine is, right? It identifies on page 1 that it's the brand name is Paxil, correct?
Correct.
And the printout is how many pages long?
25.
And on the bottom right corner, it looks like this was printed out on December 2nd, 1998, correct?
That is correct.
And there are notations in this packet, aren't there?
I see notations here on my evidence mark. Is that what you're referring to, or?
No, on and they're not like they're not words, I think, but just on maybe flip to page 22. Do you see some things starred?
On page 22, yes, I see a star on there.
And what's the star next to?
Objection, it's hearsay, Your Honor. Who put that star on there would need to testify as to what the star is next to. It's hearsay. It's a hearsay document, and the state objects.
Didn't he find this document at the residence?
He did, Your Honor. But if, let's say he, maybe, I don't want to have this argument from the
All right,
jury.
let me just look at it really quick, page 22.
And Judge, I'm not asking who said what. I'm just asking to describe the document that he found.
And your question again, for the record?
I asked him, there's an asterisk, and I asked him, what's that next to?
I think he asked that question.
Star, and it's next to the star is on page 22 is a definition of nervous system or a description of it.
And on page 25, is there a notation?
Again, Your Honor, I object. May counsel approach.
Go on the back, folks. For the record, this is Exhibit 50, right?
Yes.
And this was found in the Jensen residence on December 3rd, 1998, correct?
That's been his testimony, yes.
Yeah. And where was this found? Do you know?
Judge, I don't recall, but I do recall that it was from the Jensen home.
And did you find it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm not going to let them ask questions of who put the mark on, but if the document was found, I think it's testimony we can allow.
I don't have a problem, Your Honor, with them asking questions about this document about paroxetine. I have an objection to them asking questions about any markings or notations that were on there. And the reason I object is the only reasonable inference is that the person that put an asterisk there and then underlined certain portions of it, the person that did that is almost certainly Mark Jensen. And his purpose in doing that at the time, I would surmise, the state's theory is that he would have done that in order to direct Julie's attention to that, to explain her untoward reaction.
Well, we don't know who did it, and that's not going to come in front of the jury.
Well, Your Honor, that's just it. So these notations are, they're hearsay. And we don't know who did it. And since we don't know who did it, it should not be coming in, and we should not be asking the jury to speculate about what the significance of that asterisk is.
That's not his question. He just asked where the mark was, what it was next to.
Yes, and then he was
That's
going
it.
Yes, and Your Honor, then the next question would be, so what was underlined there? And then have the witness read what's underlined. All these asterisks and underlying, those are hearsay statements.
I'm
And
not
they're
going to
not-
allow that. We're just going to let him say what was marked.
I mean, it's, I also don't know who typed up, at its source on whatever website, who typed up this informational packet on paroxetine, but this is really no different than what's going to be coming in terms of testimony about all the computer stuff. It's just truly a description of the evidence found. And I do intend on asking what was underlined. I'm not asking who underlined it or who said what about it or who described it to Detective Ratsberg. I'm just asking him to describe this packet of evidence that he seized from the Jensen home on December 3rd. And there could be inferences, but I'm not asking or eliciting hearsay.
I think it's, I'm going to allow it. It was found in the home by the lead detective. We're not going to get into who made the mark or try to explain who made the asterisk, but it was found. It's part of the record.
I see. Well, Your Honor, the state objects to it. And
I understand.
As hearsay, but the court has ruled, and
Yeah.
we will adhere to the
So
court's ruling.
bring back to jury. Thank you. And I'm sure you're going to ask questions about other items that were found in the house. So
Well, just on that point, Your Honor, any statement, the state can introduce any statement the defendant made because it's seen by a party.
Well,
And the defense cannot introduce.
I will remember when you make a question about some other item that was found in the house.
One minute. I just need to find this so we can.
All right, bring them in.
All rise for the jury.
All right, we're back on the record on Mark Jensen, 2002 CF 314. The jury's back in the courtroom. Go ahead, Mr. Perry.
Thank you. Mr. Ratzberg, I was asking you about this Paxil printout, correct?
Correct. Yes, you were.
And that's what you see on the screen is what you see in front of you, correct?
Correct.
That's page 1.
Yes.
Now, I asked you earlier to go to page, well, actually, if you could scroll down the bottom right corner. On the bottom right corner, that's where it shows 12/2/98, right?
That is correct. Yes.
And does this look like it was just printed out from a computer to you?
Yes.
I asked you a few minutes before the break if you could look at page 22, right?
Correct.
And at the top left, that's where the asterisk is.
Correct.
And that's next to, it says nervous system, and then it has just a lot of, would you describe those as symptoms, side effects?
You know, there's a lot of words in there that I couldn't pronounce. I would not know what that definition is, quite frankly.
Well, for instance, it says amnesia, CNS stimulation, concentration impaired, depression, emotional lability, vertigo, and then it says infrequent, right? So that was under frequent. Does that appear to you to be describing, and maybe you don't know, but does it appear to be describing side effects?
I don't know.
Okay. If you could look at page 25.
Yes.
And could you read the line that's been underlined?
Yes, I can read it.
Out loud, please.
Oh, very good. Any drug which affects the central nervous system can be drowsiness or the lethargy.
And then further underlined.
Avoid drinking alcohol.
In all the years since 1998, did you ever have this printout or the zip disks that were recovered? Did you ever have those checked for fingerprints?
No.
I'm going to ask you to look at exhibits 46 and 47. These are pictures taken in the Jensen kitchen, right?
You said 46 and 47, sir?
Yes. If they're all jumbled up and you need a hand, let me know.
Yes, they are. They are. Thank you. Yes, I see D46.
Okay, and also, do you see 47 right next to it?
Yes.
Okay, looking at 46 first,
Yes, sir.
and that's it. I think in the video we saw you opening up one of the packages for Paxil that's right next to the sink, right?
That is correct. Yes.
You can see that in this picture.
Yes,
Okay, and I think even it maybe fell to the ground.
it did.
There were some dirty dishes on the countertop.
Can you point that out in the photo?
Well, I guess what I'm asking is the cups right behind the Paxil boxes on the countertop. Do you see those glasses?
Yes, the glasses. Yes.
Okay. Were those all clean dishes, or do you remember?
Well, I recall the glass that's right behind the Paxil in Exhibit D46. As I stated earlier, that was one of the items I took up to the crime lab with me, and to determine if there was some type of poisoning or antifreeze or ethylene glycol in it. And so that particular glass I did collect, and I did have it reviewed by the crime lab person.
I asked you earlier about that you testified in 2008,
Correct. Yes.
and you reviewed that testimony before coming here yesterday.
Yes.
And when you testified, that was substantially more recent to 1998 than we are today, correct?
It was, sir. Yes.
Yeah, and you were you were still actively a detective in 2008.
Yes.
You were asked about that glass in 2008.
I believe so. Yes.
And Counsel, I'm directing your attention on February 1st, 2008, page 63, lines 1 through 3. And the question is, and ultimately you never had tested that glass, true? Answer, yes, that's true. Does that sound familiar? That you did a visual investigation of that glass but did not submit it for testing?
No, that wouldn't be accurate. I believe if you go further in the transcript, that may be more clear. My recollection of it is because that glass concerned me and had substance in it, and that was things that we were looking for. I went to great lengths to obtain any substances from the Jensen home, and I recall going over that glass in particular and wondering how we could test it or if it could be tested, and I consulted with the crime lab about that.
Did you seize any of the other glasses?
If they had fluid in them, likely, but if they didn't have any fluid in them, no.
So if they appeared empty to you, you left them there.
Correct. Correct.
You're aware that the crime lab can detect residue.
When I talked to them, when I brought the items up there in December, that was my question and why I did what I did. And under their advice, that was not what was told to me.
Did you consult with the crime lab before doing this search on December 3rd about which items in the Jensen home to seize?
No, I did not.
And at the time, you didn't know what exactly you were looking for,
Yes.
correct?
Correct. Yes.
And did you swab those other glasses?
Did I swab the glasses? No, I did not.
Okay, no samples were taken from the glasses.
That is correct. No samples.
They appeared to not be clean dishes, though, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, so presumably someone drank something out of them.
That could be. Yes.
And if it visually to you appeared empty, it got left.
Correct.
If you could look at exhibits 36, 37, and 38. Well, actually, I'm sorry. We'll just go to to 47. Really same countertop, different angle, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the glass that you said had the substance in it is right behind the Paxil boxes?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 other cups that are visible there, right?
Yes.
Okay, and those are the ones that you just left as they were.
Yes.
Okay, if you could now go to exhibits 36. That's the fridge.
Correct.
And 37,
Both of the refrigerator.
just the open fridge door, right?
Correct.
38,
Yes, 38 is of the Jensen home refrigerator.
okay. Beyond taking these pictures, nothing about the contents of the fridge were documented, correct?
Other than you see the photographs here, that was our documentation of it. But as far as a written documentation, no.
But no contents out of the fridge were taken out,
No.
not even removed from the fridge at the scene.
No.
Just doors were open, pictures were taken.
Correct. Yes.
Nothing inside that fridge, including any containers, were opened or tested.
Correct.
Exhibit 39,
That appears to be a picture from the Jensen home.
okay, and that's a garbage can, right?
Yes.
And I think yesterday you testified that you examined all the garbage in the home.
We collected all the garbage with the exception of in the garage. We collected the bags, and we likely collected this garbage also as evidence.
Okay, and it was collected, were Kleenexes, paper towels and such, were that inside this garbage can?
It's garbage. I can't tell if it's Kleenex, but there's some crumpled up paper type objects in here. In fact, your photo is much, much clearer than mine is that you have up there. But I would assume that is accurate.
And were those, if there were Kleenexes, paper towels, were those tested?
They were not, no.
It was just, it was collected and that's where it ended.
No, when I went up to the crime lab, as I commented earlier, when I took up the glasses, because I wanted to have everything that was that I collected in there analyzed, and I asked the analyst at the crime lab that I have the garbage, and I asked him if that was relevant, could he test for it, and he told me he's got to have some fluid to test. If he has no fluid, he can't make a test for ethylene glycol or anything of that matter. So I did consult with the crime lab on this evidence. However, they told me that unless I had a substance like I did in the bedroom where the water was and from the drains, they'd have nothing to test.
Okay. You don't know if there were paper towels with that had wiped up vomit and were inside that garbage can?
I do not know.
You don't know if there were there was mucus on the Kleenexes in that garbage can?
I do not know.
You don't know if there was any spit, any type of fluid poured in those garbage cans that had been mopped up?
I do not know.
I don't have any pictures. I'm not sure there are from the garage, but we saw it in the walkthrough yesterday, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you take pictures of all the items in the garage?
You mean 35 millimeter camera photos?
Well, I guess any pictures aside from the video camera pictures that you took, the moving pictures.
I don't think we did.
You didn't take any chemicals from the garage, did you?
No, we did not.
And you weren't actually looking for antifreeze.
We were not, no.
Do you agree that that from the video it appeared that there might have been antifreeze in the garage?
That is possible. And when you say antifreeze, I did notice in the video as I looked at it, there are some gallon type containers on the shelf on the south side of the garage next to Mr. Jensen's vehicle. And those could have possibly had antifreeze in there. Yes,
That's where all those long shelves were, right?
correct.
That's where basically anything that was stored in that garage was. It was along that wall.
Yes,
Okay, and that's where you recognize bottles consistent with antifreeze.
correct. I also recovered some Playboy magazines from that area as depicted in the video.
You
So-
took you took Playboy magazines.
I'm sorry, you interrupted me. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I took the Playboy magazines that were on the shelf, so I did do a visual check of the garage and of those shelves. But as you pointed out, at the time, I wasn't necessarily looking for antifreeze. In fact, that would have been pretty far-fetched. So I did inspect that area. I did recover Playboy magazines, and those are still in evidence at the police department. So I did visually inspect that area and the garage, as I pointed out, in the garbage and so forth. I videotaped that. However, I did not recognize that there was antifreeze on those shelves.
Kind of like the refrigerator, aside from just an image of it, there is no inventory of it.
That is correct, yes.
And you took the Playboy magazines, but you didn't take the bottles of chemicals.
That is correct, yes.
And nothing from the garage was fingerprinted.
No,
In the kitchen, you didn't take any chemicals either, right?
other than the garbage, the only thing we took from the kitchen was the bag of garbage.
No cleaning supplies.
No,
The next day, December 4th, you attended the autopsy,
yes,
and you were there with Dr. Chambliss.
I was.
Dr. Chambliss was not on the scene,
He was not.
and you were the one that took the photographs at the autopsy.
Most of them, yes.
Now, the autopsy report that we all saw said that it started at 2:25 p.m. Does that sound familiar?
That very well could be correct, yes.
Remember how long it took?
I do not.
If Dr. Chambliss had said that it took about maybe up to 2 hours, does that sound consistent with how long an autopsy would have taken?
It does, thank you, yes.
Had you been to autopsies before?
Many,
Okay, and is 2 hours a reasonable amount of time?
yes, it is.
All right. And when an autopsy gets done, do you just immediately head out the door?
No, not necessarily. It just depends on the circumstances. Sometimes at an autopsy, in past autopsies, I've collected evidence. So maybe I'll let the doctor take care of that. Maybe he wants to turn something over to me, or if I want to turn over something to him, that's usually when we meet, kind of call it a pre-meeting and then a post-meeting, pun intended.
I haven't seen, and I want to know, were there any pictures that you took at the autopsy before incisions were made?
Well, I didn't take any. I took photos at the autopsy. However, I didn't retain the film. When the autopsy was going on December 4th, 1998, Dr. Chambliss had a camera, and at some point he got dirty, if you will, and I operated the camera for him and took the photos, and then he retained the roll of film that I took the photos with. So I did take the photos with Dr. Chambliss's camera. However, I didn't retain the film.
Have you reviewed the pictures?
I've seen one.
Okay. So it's your memory that Dr. Chambliss took some pictures and you took some.
For the most part, I took photos, but Dr. Chambliss may have taken a couple also.
And just to be clear, it's your testimony that Dr. Chambliss retained the film?
Correct, yes.
Now, on December 3rd, 1998, at the scene, you observed Julie Jensen's body.
I did.
And you testified earlier that prior to today, I guess, you reviewed your reports in this case.
Correct.
And nothing unusual about Julie Jensen's body was noted in your reports, correct?
When you say reports, I think the photos that I took are part of my report. So I obviously have that part of my report, and what I pointed out in those photos, whether concerns and something that I found unusual, was the bent nose and the blood or petechia in both eyes. So I did document that in my report. I think what you're referring to possibly is my narrative. I didn't put that necessarily in my narrative. However, I documented it through photographs.
Sure. You have the photographs and you can look at those now and you can say those are items of concern, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. In your narrative report, you mentioned nothing about Julie Jensen's nose.
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay. And in your narrative report, you were describing items of interest at the scene, correct?
Correct.
Do you remember taking any photos at the autopsy of Julie Jensen's nose as it appeared on December 4th?
I don't recall specifically.
Now, the autopsy, if we ballpark it as lasting a couple of hours,
Yes,
that takes us to 4:30-ish, right?
correct.
On December 4th, 1998.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Would it be reasonable that within half an hour of it being done, you were out of there?
Yes,
Okay. So 5 o'clock, you would have left. Do you remember where the autopsy was?
it was at the old St. Catherine's, located on Sheridan Road near 7th Avenue in the city of Kenosha.
How far away is that from the Pleasant Prairie address where the Jensen family lived?
It's probably, if you take Sheridan Road right down there, it's probably a 15-minute drive from St. Catherine's to the village of Pleasant Prairie.
Now, on December 3rd, after Mr. Jensen gave you consent to search his home,
Yes,
he then didn't stay there, right?
he did not.
Okay, and I think you mentioned that his father came and got some clothes for him.
No, in the video, I actually misspoke. I called it Dan Jensen. That was actually, in the video, I say Dan Jensen when in fact it is Mark Jensen that came over. I had contact with him,
Okay.
and in the video, I say Dan Jensen, and that wasn't corrected until now. However, I meant Mark Jensen came over. Dan Jensen wouldn't know where those personal items were, and Mark obviously did, and he collected them to stay overnight at his father's home, who lived down the road on Lakeshore Drive also. And so I misspoke on the video. That is actually Mark Jensen coming in to recover those items for his overnight stay at his parents' house.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
So it was Mr. Jensen, Mark Jensen, that came and got his clothes, came and got his shaving kit, right?
Correct, yes.
And when he left, he had basically turned the house over to, with the consent, had turned the house over to you and investigators, correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right. And at that point, fair to say he wasn't really allowed, no one else was allowed to just come and go as they pleased.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And it was kind of with that consent, that cooperation was understanding that the full scene had been like Is relinquished the right word?
Sorry, what was your last part of the question? I didn't hear you.
That the whole house had been basically relinquished to you.
Yes, the house was in our charge. It was a crime scene and potential crime scene, but part of a death investigation. And the entire property was in my custody in the police department to obtain evidence.
Okay, now you left, or at least the video, I thought ended around 10 p.m. on the 3rd.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and did anyone stay there overnight?
The police officers, I had the entire home. It was a secure site, so there was a log started with who came and went. And the officer, I had an officer guarding the house until I released it later on December 4th.
Was it just one officer that was there at all times?
There were different officers, but only one officer.
Okay. Now, after the autopsy, and if you left at 5 o'clock and maybe it takes 15 minutes, did you go directly to the Jensen home?
I did,
Okay. And you went there because you were going to do another search, right?
yes,
And you were, in particular, you were looking for fluids in the house, correct?
correct,
Like bodily fluids.
correct.
Okay. And you were checking the bed in particular?
Yes, while I was at the autopsy, I was there with Dr. Chambliss. He conducted the autopsy, and I explained to Dr. Chambliss that we didn't find any fluids in the carpet or in the bed, and then he wanted me to go there and double check to make sure there weren't any fluids on the sheets, on the pillowcases, or on the blanket. And obviously, Julie Jensen had her clothing with her, so if there were any fluids, he already had that.
Okay.
So what I did is I went back December 4th to re-examine the bedroom, and I didn't find any other additional body fluids.
Okay. And additional, you never found any bodily fluids.
That is correct, yes.
So like on December 3rd or December 4th, you didn't find any fluids on the pillowcase?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And with where her face was, the pillowcase seemed just normal dry.
Correct, yes.
Okay. We saw you testing by picking up with your hands the towels in the bathroom, and you say this towel's damp or it's not damp. Did you do that with the pillowcase?
I did. In fact, if you don't have the photos here, but you notice a couple close-up photos of some marks on the pillowcase. I suspected at first glance, I thought it was blood. And you notice a wide angle, and then you notice that I come in and you notice my finger pointing that out. When I first saw it, I thought it was a body fluid and possibly blood. So that's how thoroughly I examined the bed at that point. And it turned out it was just some markings or part of the fabric and all
Part
that.
of the pattern on the sheets, right?
Better said, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Better said, sir.
Yeah. It
Yes.
was like little berries on a branch or something, right?
That is correct. Yes.
No blood was on the pillowcase.
That is correct. Yes.
No sort of spit up.
No.
Okay. And you went and you double checked all the bed sheets, and you were looking for any bodily fluids.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. No urine,
No.
no feces.
No.
Okay. Just normal bed sheets.
Yes.
Did that search take about an hour?
Probably less than an hour, but an hour would be a good approximation.
Okay. So that takes us to maybe 6:15 if you were being real efficient.
Yes.
Were there other officers at the scene while you were doing the search?
They were outside. The officers guarding the place they stayed outside, and I entered the house by myself.
Okay. Now, also on December 4th, you went and talked with the next door neighbors.
I did.
Okay. Was that after you'd done the search?
Correct. That was as I was leaving the residence.
So I've got the chronology right. Autopsy, drive to the Jensen home, search for an hour, then go and talk with the neighbors.
Yes.
And how long did you talk with the neighbors?
Oh, it was probably I don't know, 10-minute, 15-minute conversation at most.
Okay.
And again, I'm really estimating that it was back in 98 also. So yes,
This is just from memory.
yes.
Um,
Well, no, there's some notation in my narrative report on my discussion with Mr. Voigt.
and in the narrative report, it's kind of a lengthy description of that discussion, isn't it?
That is,
Okay. And you think 15 minutes is a fair approximation for that lengthy of a narrative?
it could be more, it could be less. That's an approximate.
All right. It was all after this that you turned the house back over to Mark Jensen
Correct.
that evening?
Yes,
And did you call him on the phone?
I did.
Okay. And do you remember how quickly he came over?
I wasn't there when he came over. I returned to the police department. I called Mr. Jensen. Mr. Jensen was kind enough to give us a key also. So I wanted to make sure he got his key back and that he could re-enter and use the residence in the evening of December 4th, 1998.
Did you meet him at his house?
I did not.
Was another officer there?
Correct.
Okay. So officers were there when the house was turned back over to Mr. Jensen.
Correct.
Okay. And
And I told him to make sure they give the key back to Mr. Jensen when he arrived.
okay, so any sort of handoff back of the property would not have been done by just him showing up and the house being empty.
Correct.
There would have been like tape being taken down or and then squad cars leaving, all of that.
Well, back in 98, that tape that you commonly see now wasn't that popular, and we didn't use that out there. We didn't want to. Anyway, you mentioned tape, and we didn't use that. But I made arrangements for Mr. Jensen to return home and made sure the officer was there to hand the key off back to him.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the computer from the den.
Yes,
You took this, the CPU on December 3rd, right away, right?
yes.
Okay, you put it in the trunk of your car?
I actually put it in the back seat. Back then, well, I know it was a very expensive thing back in 98. But yes, I put it in the back seat of my vehicle.
Okay, and from your vehicle, it went to your office?
Correct.
All right. And it stayed in your custody until December 17th, 1998, right?
That is correct.
Okay, and you testified yesterday about with the chain of custody of then taking it to Brad Holler in Madison.
That is correct. Yes.
You would have turned it over to him.
Yes.
Now you drove it there on December 17th.
That is correct. Yes.
And I want to ask you about the examination that was done on December 17th.
Yes.
Brad Haller, it's my understanding, did not have time to examine it when you got there.
Well, what occurred was I made arrangements.
I'll ask for follow-up, but I guess right now I'd just like to kind of do the yes or no. Is that at least accurate in terms of what I asked?
I don't understand how you want me to answer.
Well, just if possible, yes or no. Did he have time when you got there to examine the computer?
No, he didn't.
Okay. And you had just driven from Kenosha or from Pleasant Prairie, right?
That is correct. I called him up ahead of time to make arrangements, and I drove to Madison with the computer.
You had scheduled an appointment with him?
I did.
And he said he didn't have time to do it?
He did say that he did not have time to do it after I made those arrangements, and then I drove to Madison. That is correct.
Okay. And you insisted that you wanted to do a look at the computer?
Yes, I explained to Mr. Haller that I wanted to look at the computer. That's why I called ahead and made the arrangements, because I noted, looking over the evidence from the Jensen home, that they obviously had quite a bit of written documentation and we went over some of that yesterday. And I wanted to look inside the computer and see if there was anything in the documents section of the computer. So it was a death investigation. It was December 17th now. I had no cause of death. And, you know, there were some circumstances around this case, and there were some people very hurt and very concerned. And I wanted to try to obtain a cause of death ASAP, and I didn't have one. And I was hoping the computer would aid in that. And I was looking for, as I mentioned earlier, the information that I had from Mr. Jensen, Mrs. Jensen. I looked over the evidence. There was a lot of documents. I wanted to see what was on the computer and if there was anything like in a Word document as we know of today. I'm not sure Word was available in '98, but I wanted to see if there was some written communication on that computer. And I explained to Mr. Haller, look, I called ahead of time. I drove here 2 hours. This is over half my day just coming here and back. And the arrangement is to look on there and do a cursory look to see if there's any documents on that computer that relate to the death of Julie Jensen.
Fair to say you were irritated.
Yes, yes.
December 17th, do you remember what the weather was?
I think it was a nice day. It was sunny. There was definitely not a snowstorm. But
Well, that's good at least.
yes.
Okay. But,
So, I recall it being sunny, and the reason I recall that is at that time their office was down in the square in Madison, and it was, I had to park some distance away. As you know, parking is very challenging there, and I can recall walking with a nice bright sunny day.
24 years later, you still sound irritated about driving there and him saying he didn't have time to look at it.
Well, I wouldn't use the word irritated, concerned, because this was a priority case for us at the police department, given the history here. And I wasn't able to rule out natural death, accidental death, homicide, suicide. I wasn't able to rule anything that out. And yeah, maybe you are rather correct that I was irritated at the time, but I wasn't getting any progress, and I wanted things to move along quicker. So I was a little irritated. I stepped back, and I agree with you.
You didn't want to leave without looking at this computer.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And you insisted that he turn it on.
I did.
All right. Now, you pressured him to turn it on.
I did. I was very insistent. I said, hey, look, I just went through my reasons, and I explained those reasons to Mr. Haller, and I need to look at this computer. This is a death investigation.
And so he acquiesced. He agreed.
He did. I had no clue on how to fire it up, hook it up. He had all those resources there. I also remember being that it was a Windows 98, which was, this was 98. So this was new whiz-bang computer software for its time. I had no clue what Windows 98 was. And he assisted and hooked it up, and he guided around with me and looking at the computer. And my particular concern was what written documents were on that computer.
Now, there's a reason you didn't fire it up from December 3rd to December 17th in your office, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's because of the whole thing we talked about with preserving evidence.
Correct. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That with computers, you don't turn it on and just start poking around, right?
That is, yes, I know better now. Yes.
Yeah. And arguably you knew better then, right?
Well, no, that was the first computer I ever obtained. Computers were just making their debut, if you would, in 1998. Windows 98 was the top-notch software of the time. No, my computer skills were 0 and minus. So, no, I wouldn't have.
You hadn't had any training on how to preserve computer evidence at a scene?
Yeah, we had some limited training at that time, but my training would have been I had very little training, and frankly, did not know.
And if you had learned that, I guess it hadn't stuck, right?
Well, I obtained the computer, I unplugged it and all that. In fact, I can recall when we seized the computer, we kind of had a conference around it to make sure knowing what we do. I do recall back then dial-up was the technology. I can recall a phone cord or something going into it, and we didn't know if we were going to disconnect the Jensen phone system or something like that. So our knowledge on, or my knowledge at least, on gathering that computer was very limited. But I did obtain it and bring it to the crime lab, as you mentioned, on December 17th, 1998.
Okay, and the reason why it's a bad idea to just fire it up, right, is because it alters the information or can alter information on that computer, right?
Objection, there's no foundation for this witness to answer that question.
Sustained.
Do you know from your training why it's a bad idea to fire up a computer like the way you did?
Well, I object to that question. It assumes the existence of fact, not an evidence, to wit that it is a bad idea.
Well, he did say he knows better now.
Well, I think he already testified he had very limited knowledge. He's not an expert in the area, so the objection is going to be sustained.
Do you know if
I mean, we're going to have other people testify later. You can ask your question then.
Do you know if the computer had been write blocked
When?
prior to insisting that Brad Haller and you turn on the computer?
Oh, no, I don't believe the computer was write blocked. That would be a question for Mr. Haller.
And can you spell write blocked?
No,
Is it, you can't?
no, I mean, I could guess at right and then block, but I don't know that that's the, no, I can't.
And do you know what write blocking is?
I do now.
No, what is it?
That's when you take a computer now into the crime lab, at least this was before 2012, the crime lab does something what they call write block. And what that does is secure the data on the computer, and they can still retrieve it as if nobody turned it on, as example I did. So, and they'll be able to determine that.
Okay. Regardless, you just had him turn it on,
Yes,
and you poked around in it for how long?
10 minutes. And again, I'm approximating.
Now, Mark Jensen's work computer, you made no effort to obtain his work computer in December of 1998.
No, I did not. When you say his work computer at Stifel, Nicholas, and Racine?
Yes.
No, I did not.
You didn't obtain it until 2002, correct?
Yes,
And it was in 2002 that you took two computers from his, I guess at the time, current office and an old work computer that was located in St. Louis, right?
that is correct.
Okay. So 3 years had gone by prior to trying to get those computers, right?
Correct, yes.
In December of 1998, you didn't go to his office and interview any of his coworkers.
I did not, no.
And you didn't talk in December of 1998 with any of those coworkers about whether he was in the office on December 3rd.
Correct.
You didn't do that until after he was charged in 2002.
Correct.
And in those 3 years, this is a case that had been, this is a story that had been reported in the media.
In what year again, sir?
Between 1998 and 2002.
I don't believe there was much media attention on there between that. The media attention started after I arrested Mark in 2002.
Okay. Well, it would have been well known, I guess, among his coworkers, wouldn't you say, that that Julie Jensen had died in December of 1998?
Objection calls for speculation for what was going on with respect to
Sustained.
Would you expect memories to have improved in 3 years, in 4 years?
No,
I guess my math is wrong. 1998 to 2002, 4 years, right?
I'll,
The state will stipulate that from a particular point in 1998 to a particular point in 2002, that would be 4 years. But from December 3rd, 1998 to March of 2002 is not 4 years.
You could
The
have
state objects to the question.
you could have gotten a lot greater detail in the month of December 1998 by talking with witnesses than in 2002, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
I think he can answer that question. He's the lead detective. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, would you repeat your question, Mr. Perry?
It's likely you could have gotten greater detail in December of 1998 about December 1998 than in 2002, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, I mean, we testified you testified at the very start of this today that that memories can be affected by the passage of time,
Yes,
by talking with other witnesses,
correct.
or by other people just chatting amongst friends,
Yes,
gossip,
yes,
reading reports.
yes,
Okay, and 3 to 4 years is a lot of time for that to happen, right?
yes,
Okay, and these are Mark Jensen's coworkers that I'm talking about.
that is correct, yes.
They would have known something about his situation.
They did know, yes.
You interviewed the Voights on December 4th.
I spoke with him. When you say interview, do you mean a written statement or
Well, you
just
did
I talked to him?
You talked just maybe 15 minutes ago about kind of a lengthy narrative in your summary report about the discussion you had with them on December 4th.
Yeah, when you say the Voights, which Voight do you mean in particular?
Either of them.
Okay, I only spoke to Mr. Voight on December 4th, 1998.
And you spoke with Carrie Ashley in December of 1998.
I spoke with Carrie Ashley. I don't recall an exact date on speaking with her.
Did you speak with any other of the Jensen neighbors in December of 1998?
No, no.
The consent that you got from Mark Jensen on December 3rd, it wasn't just consent to search his house, was it?
No, it wasn't.
It was pretty broad.
Well, I got a consent, pretty broad, meaning, yeah, it was pretty broad. I could search everything in there. I also obtained a form for him for any medical records of himself and Julie Jensen. So, yeah, it was pretty broad.
Yeah, it was basically things were an open book to you.
Well, I think that's probably overstated. I mean, I intended to search the property at 9020 Lakeshore Drive, and that's what I did. I explained that to Mr. Jensen previously, that when you say broad, that didn't mean I could go search the neighbors or out in the street or anything like that.
Well,
But I got consent to search the entire property that he maintained, and I also obtained a consent to obtain any medical records of Julie Jensen and Mark Jensen.
Mark Jensen's medical records he gave you consent for.
That is correct, yes.
I mean, obviously he couldn't have given you consent to search the neighbors' homes, right?
Correct.
The things that that were in his possession or his control, he gave you consent to search and seize whatever you deemed important.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Including pretty personal medical records.
Correct, yes.
Now, you never attempted to obtain Julie Jensen's, or maybe you attempted, I don't know if you did or not. Did you ever attempt to obtain Julie Jensen's records from a Mr. DeFazio?
Yes.
Did you obtain them?
No.
And who is Mr. DeFazio?
Mr. DeFazio was and I don't know the technical term, but the Jensen saw Mr. DeFazio for some marriage counseling.
He's a psychotherapist, isn't he?
I don't know.
And you didn't get any records from him.
I did not know. Well, let me be clear on that. I attempted to gain information from Dr. DeFazio, and I did call and stop by his office and speak with him. His office was also located over near St. Catherine's, and I spoke with Mr. DeFazio, and he could not recall the Jensens in treating them for the marriage counseling. He didn't know who I was talking about. He couldn't remember, and he was under the impression that his records, it was so long ago, that those records would have been purged. So I did communicate with Dr. DeFazio, attempting to obtain those records. However, I was unsuccessful.
In all the years since 1998, have you ever looked at or obtained Mr. DeFazio's records for treating Julie Jensen?
I have not obtained them, but I know the district attorney's office, I believe, obtained them. I have not seen any, but I'm aware of that the district attorney had got better results than I did.
There was a 911 call on December 3rd, right?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, and it was Mark Jensen had called 911 to report Julie's condition,
Correct, yes.
to request assistance to the house.
Yes, he called for the rescue squad.
Now, all 911 calls, even in 1998, were recorded, right?
I don't know.
You just don't remember?
Well, yeah, I don't recall. That's back in 98, and they were likely recorded. Yes.
Okay. Regardless, it wasn't saved in this case, was it?
That I don't know.
Have you ever listened to the 911 call in this case?
I have not.
So you've never heard exactly what was first said from Mark Jensen on when he found Julie Jensen.
Objection, Your Honor. This is all hearsay.
I really asked what he has never heard.
He said he never heard it. So let's move on.
At some point really just a few days after Julie Jensen had died, on December 6th, 1998, you put a GPS unit on Mark Jensen's car,
I did, yes.
on his truck.
I wasn't there. I invited Mark Jensen, or he was stopping out at the police department. I had frequent contact with Mr. Jensen. And as Mr. Jensen would come to the police department, through DCI, Department of Criminal Investigation, I teamed up with some of their agents, and I put a GPS tracker on his vehicle. I don't know what type of vehicle he was operating at the time. The DCI agents took care of putting a tracking device on Mr. Jensen's vehicle, and then later on they would remove it.
Okay. How long was there a GPS tracker on Mr. Jensen's vehicle?
For some time, I don't recall the exact length.
And nothing was ever found of value to you?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and this was done in a way where he wouldn't have, you did this in a way so that he wouldn't know that there's a GPS tracker on his vehicle?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I want to talk about the interrogation that we watched some of yesterday.
Yes.
That was on April 21st of 1999, right?
Correct, yes.
Now, you just got done explaining that you had been meeting with Mark Jensen on a regular basis.
Weekly, I would say, either by phone call or by in person.
And in person, was that at the police station?
Yes, it always was, because I wanted to make sure we could recover the tracker or put the tracker on his vehicle.
And how did that work? Did you ask him on these weekly phone calls or something to stop in?
Well, generally, Mr. Jensen would contact me primarily, and we would make the arrangements, and he'd stop in or by the police department.
He wasn't required to make weekly contact with you.
No, he was concerned.
Okay. And he checked in with you regularly.
He did, yes.
Okay. And did you just invite him in?
Yes,
Okay, and then he'd take you up on that.
yes.
And how long would those meetings last?
Not very long, probably, yeah, not very long.
Can you ballpark it for me?
Less than 15 minutes,
Okay, and would these be like on his way to work?
sometimes.
Okay, so it wouldn't be unusual for him to show up in a suit and tie?
Yes, yes.
Yes, it would not be unusual?
No, he generally was on his way to work or possibly on the way back. But yes, that would be accurate.
Okay, would he normally stop by? Would he have any of his kids in tow?
I don't recall. I know on April 21st, when he came to the police department, he had his one son with him.
That wasn't the first time you had met his son. Or was it?
I don't recall meeting his son previously, but I might have. But I didn't have a conversation with his son of any substance until April 21st, 1998.
All right, and you had purposefully tried to establish an apparent friendship with Mark Jensen.
Oh, well, I was certainly cordial and professional with Mr. Jensen. We had a very good relationship. We talked about the stock market, about his case, many things. So, yeah, I guess you would be accurate. We developed a friendship, yes.
You wanted him to be reaching out to you on a regular basis.
That was convenient as part of my investigation, yes.
Now, on April 21st, you knew that this was going to be a different kind of meeting,
Yes, I did.
but you didn't communicate that to Mark Jensen, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. As far as he knew, this was like any of the other dozens of meetings he had had with you?
That's accurate.
And so he might have been on his way to work.
I don't know.
I mean, you saw him in the video, and I don't know if you remember specifically, but he was in a suit and tie.
He was.
And I think your testimony is that this started at 9 a.m.
Correct.
and he had David with him, right?
Yes.
Okay. Fair to say he would have had no reason from you to believe that he would be there until 4 p.m. that day.
Yes.
That's fair?
That is, yes.
Okay.
I didn't think it would go that long, so I'm sure Mr. Jensen didn't.
Okay. And at no point did you say, hey, this is going to take all day?
No, I wouldn't have forecasted that regardless. I never thought we started at 9. No, he got there early, so it was about 9 o'clock, and we didn't end till probably 4 p.m. in our discussions.
And with the exception of, I think you testified yesterday that there was maybe an hour and a half video that failed. Was the whole 9 to 4 recorded?
Yes. What I did was that the interview rooms at that time at Pleasant Prairie, we had a one-way mirror on the one. And again, keep in mind, this is 1998, and we had an old clunker VCR that you would put on your shoulder. So I set it up and put that on a tripod in the adjoining room, and then through the one-way mirror. And then I had this big VHS video recorder set up on the tripod, and then I ran a microphone above the false ceiling into there. And then because I wanted to capture everything that Mark Jensen was going to say. And so that's why I did that. Recording interviews back in 98 was pretty uncommon, especially video interviews. So, and the technology was a lot different than it was today. So I had that VHS, and I put in one tape, and Detective Berg, who you saw in the video, was operating the tape in my office or monitoring it where the recording device was. And then at some point, I took a break or came in and replayed the tape, and we discovered it wasn't recording. So we swapped out the tapes. There's a total of 3 tapes, and one of the tapes failed. And why it did, I don't know. I think it was defective out of the box. But the interview that I had with Mr. Jensen, there's probably a good hour that is not on VHS tape.
Where was David Jensen during this interview?
He stayed with one of our support staff at the police department.
And was Mark permitted throughout this 7 hours to go and check on his son?
I'm sure he inquired. Mr. Jensen and I bought him lunch. We had, I think it was Burger King. We had some soda. We had coffee. We ate lunch together. We drank refreshments together. And I'm sure during that, that would have been a concern to me. However, the one secretary that was in charge of his son was very kind. And I think his son and the secretary hit it off, and he was occupied while I interviewed Mr. Jensen.
I'm not suggesting that David Jensen was mistreated. I'm just asking if in those 7 hours, if he was permitted to go and check on his son.
If he wanted, I don't recall that, but if he wanted to, I would have certainly honored his request.
You didn't offer it.
I don't believe so, no.
And when you went and got lunch, it wasn't lunch with Mark and with his son, David.
It was not, no.
Okay.
No.
Now, at the time that you had Mark come in on this day, I mean, you testified you prepared for this interview, right? This interrogation?
I did. I mean, I made some arrangements. I set up the VHS recorder and I ran the microphone. We tested the equipment beforehand, and I gathered the reports and the information that I wanted to cover with Mr. Jensen.
You hadn't done that for any of the other meetings that you'd ever had with Mr. Jensen?
Well, we discussed reports, Mr. Jensen.
I mean, the VHS, the camcorder, all of those things.
I'm sorry. Yes. No, that was our first recorded interview.
Okay. And this is the first one that was not just brief.
Yes.
And the room that you were meeting with him in, that's not where you typically meet with him.
Correct. Yes.
Would you typically meet with him just in your office or in the lobby?
I'm sorry. Would you repeat that?
Would you typically meet with him in your office?
I would typically, when we met at the police department, there was a little conference room off the lobby. I would meet him in there.
On April 21st, you were under the, at that time, misimpression that antifreeze had been ruled out, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. You believe that the way I said that, I don't want to have it be confusing. You believe that antifreeze had been ruled out on April 21st.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And your plan was to confront Mark Jensen and to try to get him to confess to playing a part in Julie Jensen's death.
So, could you repeat that one more time,
Sure.
sir?
Your plan on April 21st was to confront Mark Jensen and to try to get him to confess to playing a part in Julie Jensen's death.
Yes, that is correct, yes.
And you testified about this yesterday, that you lied to him multiple times in the interview.
I did, yes.
And you lied about the crime lab determining that he had left photos.
Well, I think my statement was I lied to him about the writing on the photos that were left around the Jensen home, and that I had a crime lab report about his handwriting being on them.
I mean, you lied about the crime lab even analyzing the photos.
That is correct, yes.
The crime lab never analyzed the photos.
I think eventually they did, however, not while I spoke with Mr. Jensen.
Well, only one photo was ever retained, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And the rest were just lost to the ages, right?
No, that the other photos, and they were primarily recovered by Mr. or Officer Cosman, and there was no real complaint on this. We were down there, as we pointed out, from 1992 until 2008, and we recovered some of those photographs. Our evidence room isn't all that big.
2008 or 1998?
I'm sorry, sir.
You said until 2008?
No.
Is there an objection?
Well, the response, it was non-responsive, Your Honor. I guess I object on that point.
Okay.
This is your witness. He's talking.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, finish.
Yeah. And since we didn't have a complaining witness at the time, and we collected them and we cleared Terry Perica, and there was no charges being pressed, I wasn't in charge of the evidence and how it was disposed of, but eventually that evidence is to keep room in the evidence collection. So there was nothing purposeful about, well, I guess there was a purpose to destroying them, but it was considered obsolete evidence.
They're gone.
They are, absolutely, yes,
They're gone and they were never tested.
correct.
You did a few other things during this interrogation, right? In terms of tactics with Mr. Jensen.
Yes,
Talked about how you lied to him.
correct, yes,
You did something where you engaged in something called persistent questioning.
yes,
You spoke over Mr. Jensen at times.
at times,
Yeah, you would interrupt him.
correct, yes,
Yeah, and the plan with these things that you were doing was to put pressure on him in that interview. Fair?
yes, I was intending to put pressure on him for him to tell me the truth.
And the truth is you were determining it.
It could be viewed that way.
You were trying to make it easy for Mr. Jensen to tell you what you wanted to hear.
Well, I
Fair?
wanted the truth. I didn't want to impose on him, and there was to say that it's something that I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear the truth, and I wanted him to tell me the truth. And I knew he was lying to me during the interview.
Now, the interrogation was from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., correct?
Approximately, yes.
And we saw, I mean, it was in sort of chopped up segments yesterday, right?
Correct.
We saw about 45 minutes worth of that.
Okay. Yes.
That seems fair.
Fair. Seems fair. Yes.
It took a lot longer yesterday than 45 minutes
Probably.
because of the stopping and reading what we had just watched, right?
Yes.
We saw a few different segments of the interview. Let me just grab the transcript of it.
Are we good yet? We need a break yet? You want to take a break? No? Yes? No? We're good. All right, we'll continue.
It looks like you have someone in the back row who would like to take a break.
I think you have a mixed.
A mixed bag.
You have mixed
I'll rule on the side of caution. Take your break. Try to All right, we're in recess.
Been around the block a few times.
Oh, I bet it's tough. I'm shedding. It was 7.
Rise for the jury.
It's not. It was 7.
All right, we're back on the record. Mark Jensen, 2002 CF 314. Appearances are the same. The jury's back in the courtroom. We are going to continue with the cross-examination. The witness is still under oath.
Mr. Etzberg, we were just sort of talking really about the content of the interrogation that we saw yesterday, right?
Correct, yes.
You can hear me okay, right?
I can, thank you.
Trying to figure out a place to put all this stuff. Early on, one of the early clips we saw, you told Mark Jensen that you had eliminated Perry Tarika as doing any of that stuff at your home.
Correct, yes.
And that was because at one point you talked to Perry Tarika and discovered that he was out of state, right?
Correct.
And that's why you believed he could not have been the person leaving photographs.
Correct.
Now, the harassment that that Julie had complained of over the years, while it did include photographs, right?
Correct.
It also was heavily about phone calls to the house, correct?
Yes, and I would prefer that we use the term images as opposed to photographs because they weren't necessarily photographs, but the term image would be a better description of what was left.
There was one photograph that was that's in existence, correct?
Correct, yes.
One image,
Yes.
and that's printed on Kodak paper, correct?
I don't know.
Okay. Have you looked at it?
Not recently.
Okay. You don't know if it appears to be a photograph in that one instance, at least?
It does.
It does appear to be a photograph?
Yes.
Okay. And the rest we don't have and we can't look at.
Correct.
I want to show you, you were shown this yesterday, and it's Exhibit S27. Let me just grab it.
Counsel, what was it that you gave?
What number is that for the record?
S27?
Thank you.
It is S27 that I gave you, right?
Correct, yes.
What is that?
That is a copy of some Pleasant Prairie Police Department reports.
You testified about this yesterday, right?
I did.
You've reviewed this before?
Yes.
And page 1 starts on January 27th of 1992.
Yes.
And the last report is December 18th, 1996, correct?
Yes,
And this is a compilation of the police calls to the Jensen households between those years, correct?
yes,
And it outlines, if you go one by one, it outlines what the different calls for service were, correct?
correct.
And the responses?
Sometimes.
Okay. In the interrogation yesterday that we saw in 1999, you talked about this ongoing issue with the photographs, correct? Or the images, as you'd like to call them?
Yes,
And I just want to review a handful of these. Okay, I mean, they're not that many really, right?
yes,
And if you could just page along with me, but the first one, I guess if you look at, well, page 1 and 2 is January 27th, 1992, right?
correct. Yes,
Okay, and that just says January 29th, 1992, suspicious problem, no other details.
yes,
Fair?
yes,
January 30th, 1992, gone for the weekend.
yes,
February 20th, 92, vacation times reported.
yes,
And June 16th of 92, there was a call because a car was parked across the street for too long.
yes,
May 8th of 93, a belief that someone had entered the residence and moved items.
yes,
November 4th, 93, there was a complaint about receiving annoying phone calls, hangups, and harassments.
yes,
You see that one?
yes,
Okay, and that's the first time that something is reported, and it was reported about phone calls.
yes,
Nothing about photographs reported in that complaint.
yes,
November 4th, 1993, receiving annoying phone calls, hangups. No, I just read that one, didn't I? Sorry. October 21st, 1994, Julie Jensen complaining that there were black males in the neighborhood selling magazines.
yes,
October 22nd, 94, a repeat of the same complaint.
yes,
On Christmas of 94, their Christmas tree lights were damaged, and they complained about that. Or she complained about that. She's the caller, right?
yes,
January 19th of 1995, it just says, from what I can tell, there's nothing, right?
correct. It's an extra patrol complaint.
January 21st of 95, there's a trespass to land, and there was a person that was cited, correct?
Yes,
May 27th of 95, nothing seems to be noted except that Perry Tarika is listed on that report.
are you talking about 90, the dated 5/27/95?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
And then finally on, and this isn't the last report in the whole packet, but I guess for the first time, and it's August 25th of 1995, there's a report about photographs being found.
yes,
And in that report, it indicates that they, on April 25th, produced photos that had been found from July and earlier, correct?
Yes,
I want to make sure I said that right. On August 25th, it was reported that they'd kind of collected photos from earlier and they were turning them over on the 25th
it makes reference to August 23rd. You're correct. Yes, sir.
to July 3rd.
So, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
You are correct. Yes. Yes,
It's very possible I said it wrong.
we're good. Thank you.
Now, yesterday during the interrogation, you were asking Mark Jensen about finding photographs, correct?
Yes,
Excuse me. And he told you some of that stuff, and this is on page 52 of the transcript.
Thank you.
He told you some of the stuff I would accumulate, and then I'd say I found it in the shed. I'd say I found it in the shed. He went on to say, and it would be a way of giving it to her without saying I've been hanging on to this stuff basically. Yeah, I'm sorry. And it would be a way of giving it to her without saying I've been hanging on to this stuff basically. I mean, but in terms of I was not coming up with this stuff. And he went on. I mean, this falls into the same trap as the phone calls. I know that Julie told me at one point that everyone thought that I was making the phone calls, and yet we'd be sitting on the couch in the living room together. Question, a hum, and the phone would ring. Answer, and the phone would ring. I mean, it couldn't possibly. I'm sitting there with her, so she knew it wasn't me. There's a time when the pictures, I know. Question, so you misled her, which in turn misled the police? Answer, the police, yes. I mean, it was not a malicious standpoint, it was. And you characterized this yesterday as him acknowledging that he was the one leaving photographs, right?
yes,
And what he actually told you is that they had accumulated and then he would show her, correct?
yes,
And that's consistent with the report from August 25th of 1995 that you just read, right?
I didn't read it completely, but yes, I believe it's consistent.
That these photographs would accumulate and then they'd be turned over.
Yes,
Now, you're also aware, we talked yesterday, and we'll get into this in a little bit, about Julie Jensen's log, right?
yes,
That was her log of harassment.
correct.
Yeah, and fair to say the vast majority of that is detailing phone calls.
Possibly, yes,
That you'd agree with that?
yes,
And it does reference, though, this issue of pictures, correct?
it does.
And if you need to see it, that's fine. Just let me know. But this is consistent with her discussing in that log, accumulating things and turning it over to Officer Kosman. They talked about a garbage bag full of evidence, right?
Correct.
Okay. You remember seeing that?
Yes,
You testified yesterday that after Mark had explained that photos were received at the office, I want to make sure I said that right, that after Mark had said that photos had been received in the mail at the office, that you talked to support staff in his office who opened the mail and you determined that they had never experienced that, correct?
In Mr. Jensen's interview, I said, would you?
Yesterday testifying.
Yes. Yes, I did. I thought you were referring to the video. I'm sorry, I was mistaken. But yes, you are correct.
That's fair. I mean, I guess, jumped from something that happened in 1999 to something that happened in 2023.
Yes, I thought you were referring to the video again. But yes, that was part of my investigation. I did speak with the staff at Mark Jensen's office,
And which office did you speak to
the Racine office.
of Stifel?
Yes.
Now I'm going to ask you about the interrogation.
Thank you.
Counsel, I'm looking at page 51, lines 25 to 52. And this was all read yesterday.
I'm sorry, Counsel, which lines?
Lines 25 to page 52, line 4. This is Mark Jensen speaking at the beginning. He says, no, they were the ones that were mailed to the office were early on in the first year or two. Question, Answer, that is when I was at, and it says unintelligible, in Milwaukee. That was when I got stuff in the mail. You remember that?
I do.
Did you speak to anyone at either the Prudential office or Baird office in Milwaukee?
No.
You only spoke to the employees at Stifel, where Mark started working in 1998, correct?
Correct.
You mentioned earlier that there's the one photo that was kept, and the other pictures have been destroyed. Were
Correct.
those ever fingerprinted?
No.
You talked in the interview and the interrogation about whether Mark Jensen wrote anything on these pictures, right?
Correct. Yes.
You never asked him to identify anything he specifically wrote.
Correct.
He never said he created any of the photos.
I don't believe so.
He told you that his wife was upset by the photos
Yes.
and that he was reluctant to tell her he had received one, and then ultimately he would tell her or show her.
Yes.
I want to clarify something from the interrogation yesterday. We were shown a clip where Mr. Jensen denied there being any sexual violence or anything sexual, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there's some necessary context to that. 5 pages earlier, because you had been suggesting different ideas you had of how Mark Jensen would have caused Julie Jensen's death, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were just, again, like we talked about earlier today, you're trying to make it easy. You're trying to propose ways for Mark Jensen to confess to you.
Yes.
And so you were coming up with these theories, right?
Yes.
And 5 pages earlier, you had suggested to him that her death was an autoerotic death and that he and Julie were playing around sexually.
Yes, yes. Are you reading that off the transcript?
Well, I read it off the transcript, just not right now. I mean, do you remember suggesting that to him?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And his response of there not being any sexual violence or anything sexually, that's in context of you having proposed that to him.
I would have to see the transcript. But I recall saying that, and Mark and I had that conversation. But
It didn't come out of the blue.
no, it did not. If you had a copy of the transcript for me, I could be more efficient, if you will.
I'm not sure what this has been. You've marked this, the portion. I'm just going to show you.
I have no objection using that.
I need this back, but this
Okay,
is
very good, sir.
just reading the bottom of the highlighted part on the bottom of 67. What does that say?
Okay, you would like me to read it?
Yes, please.
Yes. Now, have you ever heard of erotic death or autoerotic death or something like that?
And for the record, the number of the exhibit he was reading from?
Well, for the record, he was reading from.
Exhibit 26.
27 was the.
I'll have to have it marked, this page.
I'm doing that for the higher authorities,
Um,
and we do have to make a good record. So that's all I'm trying to do. Somebody has to tell me what exhibit he was reading from.
Sure, and it wasn't an exhibit because partial transcript was.
All right. The whole transcript.
I think we should print an entire copy of the interview and mark it as an exhibit. And
Whatever you wish to do.
But I'll do that over the lunch hour, and I'll have.
And then just remind us and we'll put it into the record.
The state has no objection to this method of examination, however, Your Honor.
This is exhibit 52 that you just read from, right?
Yes, it is.
And that's page 67 of the transcript of your interrogation.
Yes.
One of the latter segments that we watched yesterday was Mark Jensen describing Julie Jensen on the morning of December 3rd, correct?
Yes.
He described that she was taking very deep breaths
Yes.
as she sat up in bed with Mark's assistance.
Yes.
You asked, was she talking? He answered, hardly.
Yes.
Counsel, do you know which page of the transcript you're looking at?
I wasn't. Page 89 to 94.
Thank you.
He told you, I want to say she indicated that she was okay.
Yes.
And he also told you she took the other sleeping pill after the kids went to school.
Yes.
He was later asked Why would you roll her on her side while she's sleeping? Do you remember asking him that?
Yes.
And he answered, because she was having, the baby thing with kids, you don't lay them flat on your back because if they cough like that.
Yes.
He told you he tried to feed her. She wouldn't eat, didn't drink water the last day.
No, you're speaking of the transcript from yesterday, correct?
That's right.
Yes. Okay. It would be most helpful maybe if I had a transcript, but so I could be accurate. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want to be accurate.
No, I
So
know. I'll grab what was submitted yesterday. Do this to refresh, see if that will refresh your memory.
very good, sir. This entire page.
Yeah, hang on to this for right now. I'm showing you, the pages I'll ask you about were pages that were admitted yesterday. Right now, you're on page 103, correct?
Yes, it is. I am.
And that's the page where Mark Jensen told you that he rolled her on her side because of the baby thing with kids. You don't lay them flat on their back, right?
Yes.
On page 118 to 119, let me know when you're there.
Yes.
You want to read through those pages real quick, just to yourself?
Yes.
He told you he tried to feed her, she wouldn't eat, didn't drink water that last day.
Yes.
She tried Thursday morning but choked on it, referring to water, right?
Yes.
Do you want to take a look at 137 to 142?
Yes.
He described that she had bad breathing on the morning of December 3rd.
Yes.
We heard a small portion of the book that was read by you yesterday, right?
Yes.
You read out loud the words, "I walked in the door and approaching the receptionist counter explained, Julie was here yesterday to see Dr. Borman. He gave her some samples last night. She woke me up acting drunk and blaming it on this." I said, showing her the printout. That's consistent with what he told you in the interrogation on April 21st, 1999, correct?
Yes.
Prior to this April 21st interrogation, you had received the autopsy report.
Yes,
The autopsy report didn't have any opinion or conclusion as to cause or manner of death, right?
yes,
And you had, like we talked about earlier this morning, you were under the misimpression that ethylene glycol had been ruled out, correct?
yes,
And we talked about with the whole autoerotic death suggestion, you were trying to come up with a narrative that would explain that Mark Jensen could agree to for you, right?
yes,
In addition to your sexual violence proposal to him, you had another idea regarding asphyxiation, correct?
I may have.
I'm going to give you the transcript back so you can follow along so you can remember exactly, okay?
Thank you.
What page are you into, counsel? Okay.
If you could go to page 75 to 76. 75 starting at line 24.
Page 75, line 24, sir.
Yeah, and read to yourself to line 3 on page 76, I think.
Okay,
You suggested to him, you said, her arm was actually here. I'll show you how she was, okay? Her arm is actually across her body like that, okay? And it's an unnatural position. Do you sleep when you're on your side with your arm across like that? You asked him that, correct?
yes,
I want you to go to page 98 to 99 now. 98 starting on line 25.
page 98, line 5,
Line 25.
25, thank you.
And read to yourself to 99, line 16.
Yes, sir.
You told Mark Jensen, I know there was some type of contact there. There had to be in this chest area, Mark. There's no question about that. And the only person that could have done that was you. I'm thinking before you left, you pushed on her maybe. Now, she was frail at the time. She was frail. You said she was labored breathing. That makes sense, and I believe that. Okay, I know that probably happened, but she's frail. And you just innocently, I don't want to push her like that. And could that have caused something? I mean, we have petechia of the lungs. There's some type of contact here in the throat. There's also been an indication on the throat, as I showed you in Dr. Chambliss's report. It did not just appear there. Something and somebody had to touch her. That's the only way it could get there. There's no doubt about that. And did you push her, touch her on the throat maybe? Maybe like this? Did you say that to Mark Jensen?
I did, yes.
I'm going to ask you to go to page 152, lines 3 to 6.
Lines 3 to 6, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
You told Mr. Jensen, maybe when you pulled her over this way, you pushed her back on the chest and then went back and brought her up again. You know, you would have pushed her back.
Yes, I asked that question.
Can I ask you to go to page 161, lines 19 through 20?
Yes, sir.
You told him, we still have to explain the nose part, the head pushed into the pillow. How are we going to explain that? I mean, that's there, right?
Yes,
Finally, I'm going to ask you to go to 162, lines 4 to 9.
yes, sir.
Said something had to push it down. There's three things that happened here. Head being pushed, the nose, some type of contact here at the throat, and some type of contact here in the chest. Okay, we know that happened. Okay, you were the only one there. You had to do something, Mark. Did you say that to Mark Jensen?
I did.
It's pretty obvious a transcript of that interrogation was played since we've just been reading it, right?
Correct, yes.
I want to talk a little bit about Julie Jensen's log, the harassment log.
Yes,
I'm going to give you State's Exhibit 34 to look at. As I ask.
It's right there.
Is that the log that we've been talking about?
yes.
Okay.
Number 34.
Okay, and starting at page 33, that's where it starts, right?
Actually have it starting at page 31 in this log, sir.
Okay, well, if you could go to page 33,
I'm there.
all right, and that's what you see on the screen?
Yes,
Okay, and it details hang-ups and incidents at the house, right?
that is correct, yes.
And if you could find page 38.
I'm there, sir.
Okay, is that what's on the screen?
The top half of it is, yes.
All right. Well, the top half is the part I'm mostly
Very good.
interested in at the moment. And it says June 3rd, 1996, Detective Ratsberg called with results of subpoena for trace of phone calls received April 19th, 96. April 19th, 1996, Friday, 10:01 p.m., calling Mark an asshole. Is your understanding that was referring to a phone call that had been reported to you?
Yes,
And it says, came from low-income apartment on west side of town. Woman didn't know any of us, but said other people used her phone. Detective asked if we knew any of the following: Tina Thomas, Steve Daniels, Jenny Gunderson, or Frank Espinoza. Neither Mark or I know any of these names. Do you see that?
Yes, that's in Julie Jensen's log.
In her log, you reviewed this prior to testifying here yesterday?
Yes.
Log? Nowhere is there a report in this log that Mark Jensen was receiving photos in the mail at work between 1996 and 1998.
I don't know. I would have to go through it, but you're not trying to trick me or anything, are you? Okay, then that would be fair.
And consistent with that, as your investigation turned up, no one at Stifel recalled receiving any photos in the mail.
Correct.
Now, page 40 in the log, at the bottom, I think. Scroll to the bottom. The kind of bottom line says, I think that's December 26, 1996, right?
Yes,
It says phone calls to Mark's office and asked secretary if received postcard.
yes,
Now, you do know something about this postcard, don't you?
I do.
There was a postcard that was received at his office,
Yes,
and that did have handwriting on it.
it did. Yes,
And that's the only sort of thing related to any of this harassment that was submitted to the crime lab.
yes,
And the crime lab determined that it was not Mark Jensen's handwriting, correct?
correct. Yes,
Tucked in the beginning of, I guess, in the inside cover of that log are some letters from Ameritech, aren't there?
there are. Yes,
And there's a letter dated September 27th, 1995. Do you see that?
yes,
And I've got this marked as Defense Exhibit 51.
Yes. I recognize it. Has it been marked as an exhibit? It's part of that exhibit. Okay.
Part of that exhibit, I marked it as a separate exhibit.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's a packet of information here, and I want you to please confirm that you have those materials in front of you.
thank you. I've reviewed them.
That's consistent with what's inside the cover of the log.
Yes,
And that letter from Ameritech, it has, it's notifying Mark and Julie Jensen that we recently placed tracing equipment on your telephone line.
correct. Yes,
Okay. And then in the bottom right corner is handwritten 11/14/95. Do you see that? It says we'll start 11/15 for another 3 weeks.
sorry, Mr. Perry. I got several pages here. Yes, I see it now. Yes,
Okay. November 14th, there's a note, we'll start 11/15 for another 3 weeks, report calls, right?
yes,
And then there's some notes at the bottom of that letter that says calls from out of state, question mark, payphones, question mark, cellular car, question mark, local only, question mark.
yes,
And I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to pull up
The log again.
yeah, and if you could, page 36 of the log.
Yes,
There are calls reported on November 14th, November 15th, November 20th, 2 on the 22nd, November 24th, November 26th, right?
yes,
And it's your understanding that these could not be tracked because they were out of area, correct?
correct.
Out of area to you meant out of state,
Correct.
not something within the same area code.
Yes,
Yes, not something without in the same area code.
yes,
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a little bit about Julie Jensen's day planner.
yes,
You have it opened up?
I do.
Okay. That's the cover of it, right? That's the first page, at least, not the cover, but the first page that's on the screen.
Yes,
What does it say on the top right corner, kind of vertical?
it has Scott McCraig / Kelly Labonte.
Okay. And this is Julie Jensen's day planner.
It is.
On, if you could go to March 18th.
Of 1998, sir?
Yes, I mean, I think this whole thing is 1998, right?
Yes. I'm there at March 18th.
Okay. You see an entry for TurboTax.
I do, yes.
Is that consistent with your investigation that you learned that Julie Jensen did finances on the Jensen home computer?
Yes,
You were asked yesterday on direct exam about entries in December of 1998.
yes,
On December 7th,
yes,
you see an entry for Little Bears,
I do, yes,
and you know that that's the daycare for their youngest son,
yes,
and that's a regularly scheduled thing that appears in the calendar, right?
it is.
On December 7th, it lists book club.
Yes,
You can see on this page that's on the screen right now, you see that heart that you talked about.
yes,
That's for heart guard medicine or heartworm medicine for dogs, right?
yes,
Okay. You know, did you ever learn what time the dog would be taken out in the morning at the Jensen household?
no,
You see the Stiffle Christmas party noted on that page?
yes, December 11th, 1998, Stiffle Christmas party.
You have no idea if she planned on attending that.
I have no idea.
The following week of December 14th, you see Little Bears, piano, kids castle, French club. Those are the entries basically, right?
Correct, yes,
These are all entries for events scheduled for her kids.
yes,
The week of December 21st,
yes,
again, the daycare, last day of school, right?
yes,
You don't see any notation of any Christmas parties or holiday parties?
no,
You have no idea when these regularly scheduled events were put in her calendar?
no,
If you could go, I guess, back in time to September 28th.
yes,
There's a note about apply to hospital, right?
yes, there is.
Do you know if she applied at a hospital?
No, I don't.
On October 16th, it says volunteer. Do you know if she volunteered or where that was at?
I don't know.
You didn't follow up in December of 1998 in terms of the events on her calendar that preceded her death in terms of if she attended or her activities following up with those, did you?
No, I didn't.
That's fine. What's been marked as offense exhibits 48 and 49.
Yes,
Of course, I handed those to you and I don't have marked. Which one's 48?
University of Wisconsin Parkside. It's a two-page document marked as D48.
And the other one's 49?
Yes, sir.
And that's a certified, that's a copy of a certified copy of a transcript for Gateway Technical College?
Yes, that is listed as Defense Exhibit D49 from Gateway Technical College.
Starting with D49 from Gateway Technical College, that's a transcript for Julie Jensen, correct?
It is.
And it indicates that in 1996, she took a course called Human Body Structure and Function
Yes,
and received an A in it, correct?
yes,
And the transcript from UW Parkside on D48. You have that in front of you?
I do. Yes,
It includes courses Bioscience and Intro into Human Development.
yes,
In spring of 1978, she took Nutrition and General Chemistry,
yes,
took Principles of Human Physiology,
yes,
she took a class called Death and Dying.
yes, all of them? I still have this here if you want to mark this right away.
As of 1998, How many years of experience had you had?
Oh, that would be an estimate, 12 to 15 would be an estimate.
Okay, and that was writing reports
Yes,
as an officer, then a detective?
yes. I started at the police department on the auxiliary. I was, I had continually got promoted, and I was a detective sergeant at the time in 1998.
Okay. Trained to be as accurate as possible in your reports?
Yes,
You've worked on thousands of cases.
yes,
You need to keep detailed reports because you need to have a record to remember what happened.
correct, yes,
And other people need to be able to look at those reports
yes,
and rely on them.
yes,
And you've been trained to do reports as soon after an incident as possible.
try to, yes,
If you don't promptly note it, it can be difficult to remember it.
absolutely.
I mean, today we're talking about something that happened in 1998, right?
We are,
And include all the information you think is important. That's fair?
yes, fair.
Do you remember interviewing Laura Shore in this case? And if you don't, or if you need to see your report in this matter, just let me know.
Yes, I am going to need to see that, sir.
I handed you what's stamped at the bottom, 973. Is that from your police summary? Your narrative report, I mean?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You can just read it to yourself and let me know if that refreshes your recollection.
Yes,
When you interviewed Laura Shore, all those things about documenting the important stuff was at play when you typed this up, right?
yes,
Okay. You wouldn't have put something in here that wasn't told to you, correct?
yes,
Laura Shore told you that she spoke with Julie Jensen, and she related that Julie had a job lined up at Bradford and was to start on December 7th, 1998. Correct?
correct.
That's something that Laura Shore told you?
Yes,
That Julie Jensen told her that she had a job at Bradford High School and start date was December 7th, 1998.
correct.
You testified yesterday about talking with Dave Nearing.
I did.
And that although you don't have any report that he told you in 2002 or 2004 about some sketchbook of penis drawings.
Yes,
And you didn't document any of that.
correct.
And this conversation that you remember happened, by your estimation, 18 to 20 years ago.
Yes,
No further questions.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Let's start with the photos. And it was Mark Jensen that told you about photos being mailed to him at the office, wasn't it?
yes,
In fact, I'll direct your attention to page 43 of the transcript of your interview. And as I've indicated, Your Honor, the state's going to be producing a copy to be marked as an exhibit. Is the television turned on? Because it's not coming up there.
She might have to switch it to you.
So, who?
Is it on?
There we go. Can you read it? Do you recall posing the following question to Mark Jensen? Question, and I just want you to cooperate with me so we can get down to the bottom. Now, you left the photos around there, right? Am I right on that? Can you give me that? Did you leave some of them there? Answer, there were times when I didn't. I'd get stuff in the mail. I wouldn't give it to her initially because it would cause a great deal of upset, and that wasn't helping us. Is that the question you posed to him and the answer he gave?
yes,
And then he went on to say, answer, there were times I just threw them away when I got them, but I mean, in terms of having the photos. Question, did you leave them around the house? Answer, no, I did not. I mean, absolutely not. I mean, but there were times when I would just throw them away, when I would stick them someplace like in the garage for a while and then bring them out. So she knew what was going on. Question, so that I'm clear here, I don't understand. Answer, in terms of question, you get a photograph in the mail with her in it showing her with a man's penis. Answer, yeah, and that was the stuff. It was very early on. I got that in the mail. I mean at the office. Question, okay, answer, in the mail. So as Mark Jensen was telling you early on that he's receiving these communications in the mail at the office, correct?
yes,
Page 50, line 15. Line 19. And then do you recall posing the following question in council? This is page 50, line 19. Question, and you ended up showing the majority of them to her? Answer, exactly. Question, although they, go ahead, please. Answer, how many times do you have to see pictures like that and get reminded of it before you kind of go, man, it's not worth it. It gets old. You put it away. And I'd put them away, and then something would happen, and I'd get pissed off, and I'd pull them out, and I'd say, I found these in the shed. Question, when in fact you had them. Answer, I had them. I mean, they'd accumulate them for weeks. Question, now why would somebody send them to you in the mail? I don't understand that. I mean, we cleared Perry of doing it. Answer, I have no idea. So those questions and answers were posed to you.
yes,
Now, with respect to the conversation about Mark Jensen going to see Dr. Borman, let me go to Directing the court and counsel's attention to page, I think it's page 13, line 1.
Did you want those on the screen, sir?
I am going to.
Okay.
Question. This is what, in fact, I marked some of the things in here because you seem to indicate to me that you thought that she could have died from some type of overdose or an allergic reaction to the Paxil and Abrium, which you meant to say Ambien. I think it was that she was prescribed. Answer, okay. Question, right? And then you supplied me with answer, well, that's what was here. Question, this here, which makes you know her unsteadiness and all of that. Answer, because you mentioned, I'm sorry, question, because you mentioned, and yeah, I don't want to get the dates mixed up, but this was on the 2nd that you were concerned you went to see over to Dr. Borman's, right? Correct. Question, okay, and what happened? Okay, she was not feeling well. You called Dr. Borman to begin with. She did. Answer, right. Question, okay, what happened after that? Answer, she saw him Tuesday. Question, which would have been what when you say Tuesday? The 1st. Question, the 1st, okay. Answer, the night of the 1st, early morning of the 2nd, it was when we got this off the internet. 2nd, or yeah, it would have been Tuesday night. Wednesday morning, I went and saw Borman. I didn't call him. I just went over to the office. Do you recall that, posing those questions and getting those answers?
Yes.
Now, and then question, answer, he gave me the prescription for the sleeping pills Wednesday morning, right? Question, right, that was answer, the Ambien. Question, Ambien, right. Now, when he was describing this, the purpose of showing her the printout about the Paxil was to explain why she was feeling intoxicated in the early morning hours of December 2nd, correct?
Yes.
Speculation.
Overruled, go ahead.
Well, he explained to you why he pulled up the paroxetine, the paper about paroxetine and Paxil, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And it was because she was acting like she was drunk in the middle of the night on December 2nd, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, and those signs you've learned in the course of this investigation, that behaving as though feeling as though you're intoxicated, that's a sign of ethylene glycol, the first stage of ethylene glycol poisoning, correct?
It is the first stage, yes.
And so if somebody had knowingly ingested ethylene glycol on the evening of the 1st, that person would understand why they're feeling intoxicated.
Objection, speculation.
What's, well,
I
I
don't think
allowed
it's
the first,
speculation, Your Honor. If the person has researched,
I'll allow it. I allowed the first one. This is the lead detective. Go ahead.
so if somebody has ingested and knowingly and intentionally ingested ethylene glycol in the evening of the December 1st, and then they're feeling intoxicated in the early morning hours of December 2nd, they wouldn't have any questions about why they were feeling that way. They'd know that that's the first stage of ethylene glycol poisoning, correct?
That is correct, yes.
But Mark Jensen indicated to you that Julie was feeling intoxicated and she was rubbing her knees and was wondering why that was, and that's why he pulled up the description of paroxetine or Paxil. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is true.
Now, so Julie didn't know why she was feeling intoxicated.
Yes.
So, isn't it convenient to have her ingest something that he can pull up stuff on the internet that makes it sound like, well, this is a possible side effect of Paxil.
Objection, argumentative.
It was convenient for Mark Jensen to do that, wasn't it?
Why don't you just rephrase it, Mr. Chairman?
Well, where is the exhibit on paroxetine? Is that
I think they're,
what was it,
Let's try to keep the exhibits on the table up here.
Your attention to defense exhibit 50, and Your Honor, I believe defense exhibit 50 in evidence.
50 will be received.
So there were certain portions of that exhibit that had been, there was an asterisk placed next to it, and then another one where it was asterisk placed next to it, and it was underlined, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Can you find the part that was asterisked and underlined?
That would be page 22 of 25, and there's a star there, and the item next to it is nervous system.
Thank you. That was underlined, so show me the part that's underlined. Show me the part that's underlined.
Page 25.
Oh, right there.
Yes,
That's page 25, correct?
yes.
And I'll go back to my microphone so that the. No, I need the document. Okay, so the asterisk was on page 22. Asterisk, and then it reads nervous system, frequent, amnesia, CNS stimulation, concentration impaired, depression, emotional liability, vertigo. And then after that, infrequent, abnormal thinking, akinesia, alcohol abuse, ataxia, convulsion, depersonalization, hallucination, hyperkinesia, a whole bunch of stuff. And then rare refers to a number of rare circumstances. But then we go to page 25, which is not only asterisk, then there are certain portions of it which has an asterisk next to it. And underlined were the words, any drug which affects the central nervous system can cause drowsiness or lethargy. Avoid drinking alcohol. Those were the parts that were underlined, correct?
Yes.
So listed on page 22, one of the things that's listed as a frequent problem is vertigo, correct?
Yes.
Concentration impaired.
Yes.
Some of the symptoms that Julie was manifesting in the early morning hours of December 2nd, 1998. Correct?
Yes.
So it was convenient, wasn't it, for Mr. Jensen to be able to pull this off the internet and show it to Julie Jensen, correct?
Yes.
Now, he made reference to showing her on the computer, but in fact, it wasn't on the computer. He printed it off the computer, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Now, if she was able to get up, he could have just shown it to her on the computer, correct?
Yes,
But actually what he did is he printed it out.
yes,
And that suggests to you that he printed it off the computer and then he took it into the bedroom to show it to her.
had to have, yes.
Now, if Julie Jensen had intentionally ingested ethylene glycol in the evening hours of December 1st, 1998, she would fully expect to be feeling intoxicated in the early morning hours of December 2nd, 1998, correct?
That's very likely, yes.
But the reasonable inference to draw from this is that she didn't expect to feel intoxicated in the early morning hours of December 2nd, 1998.
Yes,
And further, you're aware of the fact that later at around 10 o'clock on the morning of December 2nd, when she was talking to Margaret Voigt, she was again feeling these symptoms, correct?
I object to the just endless leading right now.
Why don't you rephrase it, Mr. Chairman?
Do you recall that later, around 10 o'clock in the morning, Julie Jensen spoke to somebody over the telephone?
yes.
Who did she speak to?
The Voights, the neighbors to the south.
Well, she spoke to Margaret Voigt in particular, correct?
She did, yes.
And Margaret Voigt had observed, had she not made certain observations about the way Julie sounded?
Yes.
And what did she indicate about the way Julie sounded?
She sounded drunk or may possibly disorientated.
And furthermore, Julie had said at that point, whoa, this medication, she didn't expect to have that impact on her, correct?
Yes,
So even at 10 o'clock in the morning, Julie Jensen was still confused about why she was feeling this way.
yes,
Which would suggest that she did not know she'd had ingested ethylene glycol.
absolutely.
But there was somebody that knew that she'd ingested ethylene glycol.
I'm sure there was.
And pulling off the side effects on paroxetine would be a convenient way to mislead Julie, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Nothing further.
Recross.
Yeah, just a few questions.
Sure.
Characterize this correctly. You just testified on redirect that if a person had taken ethylene glycol, they would have known why they were feeling intoxicated, right?
Yes,
And that there would have been no reason for wondering why she felt intoxicated.
correct.
All of that assumes she was being honest with Mark Jensen about her intoxication and having taken ethylene glycol.
Yes,
You said even at 10 a.m. with her call to Mrs. Voigt, that Julie was confused about why she felt this way, right?
correct.
Again, that assumes that she would have called and been honest about having taken ethylene glycol.
Can you repeat that one more time, the last part?
That assumes honesty, right? It assumes that Julie Jensen was being forthright with her neighbor about having taken ethylene glycol.
Objection, that question is argumentative, Your Honor.
I'll allow it. Go ahead, answer it.
Assuming that she was being honest, yes. Is that possible? Yes,
Now, have you studied ethylene glycol poisoning?
a little bit.
Yeah. Are you familiar with all of the symptoms of phase one?
No,
Are you able to look at that list of symptoms of paroxetine, of Paxil? And is it your testimony that those are the exact same symptoms as ethylene glycol poisoning?
they're not. The one that I'm familiar with the first stage is the drunkenness because ethylene glycol actually has alcohol in it. So that's how I know that.
Why don't you let him finish his answer?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought he had.
Oh.
That's the only similarity that you saw, correct?
Yes,
Now, you just came to a conclusion that because it was printed off, that meant he had to have taken it to her in the bedroom, right?
Trying to recall if he told me that or not, and I just don't remember without reviewing it.
Can you take notes on something without printing it off?
Yes. Say that one more time.
Can you take notes on a document without having printed it off?
No.
I mean, you can now, but
Yes.
in 1998, you couldn't, right?
Yes. Not that I'm aware of. Let me put it that way.
That's all.
Thank you.
We're done with this witness. Thank you. Do we have all the exhibits?
Yeah, and I need to move a number into evidence.
Yeah, I don't want any on the attorney's desks as we will not be able to find them. Let's start moving in what you want to move in. And please use the microphone so we all can hear. Do we have any exhibits there? Put them over here.
Into evidence exhibits 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, and 52.
All right, those are received. Does the state have anything they wish to move in at this time?
I'd moved it in earlier, Your Honor. I don't think.
You
there's any-
already moved them in?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think there's any more at this juncture. We will be moving in the transcript of the interview at a later
Just
time.
remind us when we come back, okay?
Yes.
Okay, folks. The 50's already been received? All right, so it's been received for the record 50 once before.
Thank you. Your Honor.
Okay, have a good lunch, 1:15. Thank you. Okay, we're holding the jury.
I got it. We'll get one away. I'm gonna make sure that.